とずっと昔の世界。そこにはたくさんの命とキラキラ輝く青い海がありました。水の惑星。みんなはここをそう呼んでいたのです。けれども人々の暗い心が綺麗なものを全部壊していきました。どれだけ経っても戦争は続くばかり。世界はとっくに枯れ果ててしまい、もう奪うものもありません。たくさんの命が悲しい思いをしました。しかしまだ希望を捨てない人もいたのです。クイーン・ブレイズフォードはとある小さな国で生まれました。小さなクイーンは自分を幸せ者だと思いました。私には住む家があって少しだけど食べ物もある。私にはお父さんとお母さんがいる。だけどそんなクイーンの幸せをこの世界は許してはくれませんでした。クイーンはある日友達に尋ねました。ねえ、あなたも私と同じでしょ？辛くないの？友達は笑ってクイーンに言いました。でもね、きっと明日はいいことがあるんだよ。
And Idea Factory has released its first game for 2020 in Arc of Alchemist. I've only just started to play this game. The footage that you're going to see in the video today is from the first 4 or so hours. And I'm still obviously quite a way away from actually writing my review about this game. I will aim to have that done by the end of the week, fingers crossed, but as review code came in a little bit later than usual for Idea Factory, I haven't had quite as much time with this right before embargo lift. Anyway, I did want to do a video because I wanted to start talking about this game. I think it is a really lovely game, and Idea Factory keeps going from strength to strength. It's amazing to think that just one generation ago with the PlayStation 3, Idea Factory's output was considered incredibly low quality kind of B-tier stuff. People enjoyed the games, like the original Hyperdimension Neptunia and that kind of stuff. People enjoyed them, but you kind of enjoyed them despite the gameplay. As we've seen over perhaps the last year with stuff like Dragon Star Varnia and Death End Request and stuff like that, Idea Factory has emerged as, well, they make really good quality JRPGs now. You can enjoy them on the basis of the gameplay, not just because you enjoy how quirky they can be in terms of narrative and character. So this game does continue that trend, I'm happy to say. I was immediately drawn right into it and really loved it, actually. I'm really having a good time with this one. It's one of those ones that I'm finding hard to put down, and yeah, it's really, really good. So the thing that really struck me right from the outset with this one was its quite serious tone in places. You wouldn't expect it, given that the characters are these kind of really cutesy SD anime style characters. Plus, of course, Idea Factory's heritage with the Neptunia series and whatever. But this one does not pull any punches right from the outset. It is presenting players with an apocalypse. In fact, it's right at the end of the apocalypse where there aren't many humans left at all, and those that are left are counting down the days that they've got left. And the game doesn't pull any punches about why that has happened. Right at the start you get this cutscene that people a couple of thousand years ago were so exploitative of the environment that they just used and they started to go to war with one another, and the conflict escalated constantly, and at some point it all just became too much and the Earth basically fell apart, and now there aren't many resources left, technology isn't really there anymore, and the people scratch out a living from basically scavenging around the ruins of the world that once was. So anyway, these characters that are left set up this party to go adventuring and look for what is an actual miracle, which is basically what they're pinning their entire hopes on. their entire the entire survival of humanity relies on them finding what is referred to as a miracle. And obviously, given that I'm only about 4 hours into the game, I don't know how this plot plays out, but it is intriguing. And while there is still plenty of humour and light-hearted moments in the game, particularly with the way that the characters interact with one another when you go back to home base, there is a very serious tone to this one, and it is very relevant, obviously, to the modern world when we're having such important conversations about climate change and the way that we're using the resources that we have on the planet, and the perception amongst a lot of people, including myself, is that it isn't sustainable the way that we are right now. This game kind of, in a very fantasy sense and a very ridiculous way, does represent a warning about that. So yeah, it's a really intriguing premise. You get the sense that there's probably more to it than just being able to find a miracle. You want to know exactly why the machines have gone berserk and are killing the humans. You want to get a sense of the broader political environment, because within the first couple of hours I ran across another faction, another city of people, and they were not friendly. I didn't have to fight them, but there was the sense that there was that rivalry between the humans that are left as well. So while this is certainly not a Fallout game in terms of its intensity of themes with the apocalypse, I was immediately reminded of the Atelier series, actually, because Atelier Dusk, which I was playing earlier in the year, and I did a video earlier in the year, is also about that kind of, it's a very colourful and bright kind of apocalypse that the game presents, again because of encroaching deserts, and humanity's use of resources is kind of the core of that. But as I said earlier in the video, it's not just about the concept with Idea Factory's games anymore. There's also an expectation, I think, that they play alright, or if not alright, quite well actually. I think that people who enjoyed their JRPGs are starting to realise that Idea Factory is really starting to punch up and create games that are really enjoyable to play as well. Arc of Alchemist is an action JRPG, and it's quite fluid. It feels quite nice to play. It's something that I would never have expected Idea Factory to really nail. But you play as one character. You've got 3 out there on the adventure map with you. Those other 2 are kind of AI controlled, at least in this initial stage. You might be able to make the party larger later on, but for now I've got 3 characters, and I've got direct control over one. She's got magic attacks, she's got a ranged attack and a melee attack, and the hordes that come after the group are quite large, or can get quite large in size, up to maybe 6 or 7 different enemies on the screen at once, with other enemies popping in. There's plenty of landscape traps as well. There's these kind of tower things, which is what you can see on the screen there right now, and those shoot at you while you're trying to deal with the enemies. There's a dodge button which you'll need to make good use of, and it's quite fluid as well. It all feels good. The mechanics of this game, at least in the initial stages, feel really nice. There's a good play between, if you want to use the magic attacks, it takes a second or 2 to go through the attack animation, and in that time you're left quite vulnerable, so you need to time those things right. You need to find the right moments to attack the enemies, you need to dodge them, and everything else that you'd expect from a good action RPG is here. And right away I was really kind of into the combat system. I really enjoyed it, and it made it very easy to push on. What does have me a little bit confused at this early stage is just how fast everything moves. I'm not just talking about the combat system. I mean, the combat system is nice and fluid, like I said, but the pace in which the game goes through its story is really quite surprising. There's these huge leaps between moments in the game, and then all of a sudden you feel like you're like a quarter of the way through it, and because you're told that you found 1 of 4 particular objects in the world which you need to, and the cutscenes, they kind of cut in and out and tell you a lot in a very short span of time, and it just feels like this is moving very fast. So whether this means that our Arc of Alchemist is quite a short JRPG at 20 hours or so. I'm not sure, given that it is Idea Factory. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. But in which case, it's quite dense in terms of how much story it's getting across in its time, and I'm quite impressed with the writing as a whole. I feel like you've got a big cast of characters to choose between. There's 7 to start with, and then you run into your rivals quite soon, and there's more of them to get to know. And yeah, it does feel like there's a lot of stuff going on, and it doesn't give you a chance to get bored with it at any point. You're just constantly finding new areas, dealing with environmental issues, traps. Kind of there's some light puzzling in there as well, where you need to throw blocks down to be able to scale up mountains. So where Idea Factory's environments used to be quite flat and dull, and when you weren't fighting in combat there wasn't much else to them, in this one there is a sense that there's quite a lot actually. So that was also quite impressive. And there are a couple of other things that I've really not had a chance to dig into too deeply yet, but I think will be quite good. One of the main ones is there's this base that you keep returning to, and you can buy all these buildings using resources that you find in the world to build up that base, and you can level it up, and you can add different equipment to your shops by putting the buildings in the right spot and all of that kind of stuff. It's a very light on base building mechanics so far, but I think it's going to be quite effective and efficient, and it just adds that little bit more depth to the overall game. I'm also really impressed with the presentation. I wasn't quite sure about the characters at the start, but I've grown to really like this art style. The environment is, well, it's B grade, I guess, JRPG stuff, but it's not cheap. It doesn't feel cheap, and the music in this game is actually really impressive. I've never felt like Idea Factory has the best musical composers going around. If you played any of the Hyperdimension Neptunia games, they do come across as a bit shrill at times, but again, just over the last year Idea Factory has really matured that side of things, and this game, at least at the early stages, has a lot of kind of pan-flutey heavy music, and I do love the pan flute. It's one of my favourite instruments, so it has that really kind of soulful sound to it, and it really adds to the tone of the game. As I said, there is still humour in it. It hasn't forgotten the Idea Factory heritage by any means, but there is a subtleness and a maturity to this game, and it just shows, I guess, where Idea Factory is going as a company. And I think that this is a really strong start to 2020 for them. I think that whether this game sells well or not, I don't know. It's again another new IP, and Idea Factory has been experimenting with a lot of those recently as well. But I hope it's a successful one, because I think there is a lot to this one, and I think that people who haven't really been into Idea Factory games in the past, this might be the one to start with, because it's immediately accessible thanks to its action combat system. The storytelling is to the point, and it doesn't get too over the top with the fan servicey stuff, and yeah, it's just a really accessible, easy playing, enjoyable JRPG with a good story to share, some good mechanics, and I'm really looking forward to playing the rest of it and reviewing it. So thanks very much for watching. Like and subscribe, as I always ask. If you do enjoy my videos, please back me on Patreon. Otherwise, yeah, look forward to my review about Friday, I hope.